If you have any interest in the tabletop role-playing game scene, you may be interested in the game that I have been developing for the University Honors Program Signature Work Project. When I was brainstorming ideas for my Year 4 project, I was thinking about the pandemic, how virtual activities have become the standard, and especially for this, how the tabletop role-playing game community has had to adapt. There are three issues that inspired this project. The first is that most role-playing games were not designed from the ground up to be played online. They may be adapted well, but they weren't always designed for it. We tend to have to use third-party tools such as Roll20 or Foundry to accommodate for games such as Dungeons and Dragons or Pathfinder. The second is that not every game that is designed to be online has a rules-light or easy-to-manage approach. One great example of this is Weave, which has transitioned to online, but still has yet to master a game that is easy to run. The third issue is that rules-light games tend to have too few creative constraints on the live roleplay aspect. It can be difficult to form a cohesive narrative without your resident overlord game master guiding consequences to your actions. Fiasco is an amazing game, don't get me wrong, but the number one issue of it experienced is the game grinding to a halt when people aren't sure how to handle other player actions. Hello, my name is Jackson Gaydon, and let me introduce you to the game We Journeyed Together. So what is this game? We Journeyed Together is a tabletop role-playing game whose play materials are accessed through a companion web application. In this game, a group of travelers embark on a journey, undergoing a series of encounters in various dangerous locations, grow as a team until eventually facing a great enemy. But how did I make it? Well, I primarily used Google Firebase for the web server hosting, real-time database, and Google account authentication. This means that to use the web application, you must have a Google account and be willing to have the web application store your email address. Besides that, I used my own imagination to craft the rules, mechanics, dynamics, and aesthetics of the game. So how do you play it? To begin, you're going to want to create a game. Open the web page and log in using your Google account. Then create a game. From there, you're going to need to specify a unique game name, the number of players you'll be playing with, and of course, the module. Of course, right now there is only one. Next, you're going to need an email for each player that is going to be playing in your game, and a description for the threat you'll be facing and its name. Once you're ready, click Create Game. After doing so, you can select it from the My Hosted Games dropdown and click Join Game. If you have yet to create a character for this game, you're going to need to do that first. So just pick a name, childhood and career proficiency, an aspect for each ability on an 8-sided die, and a deep secret. The childhood proficiency indicates what kind of terrain you grew up in, while the career proficiency indicates what your traveler has studied. The deep secret is something that ties your character to the nemesis. Did the Dark Lord kill your parents like any standard fantasy villain worth their salt would? Then the aspect abilities. These will become relevant during the encounter system, but for now, you just need to know that P and D means peace and diplomacy, A and C means aggression and coordination, and I and A means investigation and analysis. These are the three abilities in the game, similar to how D&D and D&D adjacent tends to have strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. Once you create your character, you're ready to go. The host of the game is going to open the tier 1 options of the journey map and choose a location based on, who's going to be the main character. In this case, I'm going to be the main character, and the host, which is also myself, is going to choose the biodiverse plane because I am proficient in the plain biome. Keep in mind that only people who have created a character can be the main character. There are X locations per tier, where X is the number of players, so each person gets a location per tier. Notice how the location has a biome and a theme that matches child and career proficiency accordingly. You get a bonus to any aspect checks you make equal to your proficiency bonus in the corresponding fields if you get a match. In this example, I chose the biodiverse plains because I get a proficiency bonus from that, a +1 on all aspect checks that I make. It will then generate this random encounter for me from the database, in which I will act as the main character. Another player will be the narrator, who follows the success and failure of my aspect checks to describe the consequences of my actions in a narrative form. Suppose we had this encounter. I would first need to roll an action hand. We look up and we see the challenge levels. We see that P and D and A and C are both at a challenge level of 4, which is certainly easier than a challenge level of 6. So I'm going to roll an A and C check because it's going to be easier to be a success. As you can see, I rolled an 8, which was certainly enough to beat it, but if I had rolled less, then that would be a failure. If it's a success, I can add 1 here to add the number of successes. If it's not, I simply lost the use and I have to keep going. Regardless of the outcome, the narrator must then describe the results. After that, I choose a course of action and try again. But when I run out of aspect checks or meet the minimum number of successes, the encounter is complete, and the host must select either success or failure. An example encounter would go like this. All right, I'm going to use a peace and diplomacy check to try and persuade the wolf pack that I'm friendly. I hold out my hand and offer some rations. All right. Oh no, I only got a 2. Unfortunately, as you reach out your hand, the wolves are not convinced, and one tries to bite off your fingers. You pull back your hand in time, but they're coming for you. What do? I'm going to use aggression and coordination to try and climb up the tree I'm backed up against. All right. Oh, nice. I got a 6. That's a success. Okay. You jump up, the wolf's teeth hitting the spot you were a split second ago as you haul yourself onto the first branch and keep climbing. However, they're still below you, waiting for you to come down. This would continue on until the encounter is complete. After that, you resolve a scene, which is basically a low-stakes role-play scenario where you give minor mechanical bonuses to yourself or your teammates while having a conversation around a campfire at the end of the adventuring day. Then we return straight back to the location selection and it starts anew. This will continue until all 3 tiers of locations are complete, at which point you will enter the final confrontation, which is basically one big juiced up encounter. Beyond Google Firebase as a resource for development and hosting, another resource I would like to give credit to is Dr. Josh McCoy. Dr. McCoy was willing to give me direction and instruction on how to begin planning a project such as this, and offered significant insight into its development throughout. I have been incredibly fortunate to have had this opportunity and his guidance, so I want to thank him for all of his help in this project. Likewise, the University Honors Program was the one that provided this entire opportunity in the first place. I also want to thank my partner for supporting me in this multi-term project, as well as my parents and friends. All of the support, tests, and insight these people have brought to this game have been greatly appreciated. Designing this game has been a very interesting experience. In the beginning of a project, it's so easy to generate so many ambitious, different, and exciting ideas. But when it comes down to it, sometimes you have to look at your deadlines and time constraints and really put in effort to make sure that the features you do want come out the way you want them to. Ultimately, this definitely narrowed down the focus of the game itself, as it should, leading it to be simpler and more linear and streamlined than I originally thought I could make it. Luckily for me, this is exactly what made it a better game, since I wanted it to be accessible and easy to run. Each game that is hosted is meant to be played once and then concluded, like a mini campaign. Since I wanted to make a game that had few entry barriers, making each game a small commitment felt like a good idea. Spend a few hours with some friends, but the story concludes at the end. Of course, players could choose to run sequel games to continue their story, but mechanically, the game loop does end here. In creating this game, I was hoping to make something accessible and easy to start and dig into. As I'm nearing completion of this game's development and test the game, I'm hoping to see the impact that I desired. But regardless of the outcome, my tests so far have been fun and a good way to enjoy myself during a very frightening time. I hope that in making a game focused on overcoming adversity as a team, I can share these moments of fun and triumph with others to make the everyday stress of living through a pandemic perhaps just a little bit easier. Thank you for your time.